מחבקו מינם בין צעקו ורוסיקו לא ניבא מחבקו מינם בין צעקו ורוסיקו לא ניבא מחבקו מינם בין צעקו ורוסיקו לא ניבא מחבקו.
Hello everyone, as we get closer to Shabbos Parshat Haazinu between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, it seems like we are all violating halacha. We are literally reforming Judaism. And it seems like we have changed what it says in the Gemara twice over. The Gemara in Maseches Megillah, Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Bet says that when Rosh Chodesh Av comes out on Shabbos, as it did this year, you're supposed to read Chodshechem u'Moadechem Sana Nafshi, the Haftorah for Shabbat Chazon, a week earlier. We didn't do that. And then the Gemara says, well, on Tisha B'Av itself, what should be the Haftorah? And the Gemara says you should read Eicha Aita Lezona, the Haftorah of Shabbat Chazon, and we didn't do that on Tisha B'Av. And then the Gemara says, what are your suggestions for the Torah reading? One suggestion is for Parshat Bechukotai, the blessings and the curses. The other is the sin of the spies, which happened on Tisha B'Av. And finally, the Gemara says, Ha'idna, today, we have a minhag. We read Kitolid Banim, as we did. And finally, we read Hasof Hasifem as the Haftorah in the morning. So, you could see already in the Gemara, there were changes. There were suggestions, but the Jewish people actually did otherwise. Well, let's come to our Shabbos with that in mind. The Tosfot in that Gemara says, if we're already talking about changing what it says in the Gemara, and that is the fact that on this particular Shabbos, between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, when this is what we should do in terms of the Haftorahs. Parshat Nitzavim, before Rosh Hashanah we read Sosasis, the last of the 7 Haftorahs of consolation. In between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Shabbos Shuvah, that we call Shabbos Shuvah, we should read Dir Shu Hashem Behi Matzo, which we read on Tzom Gedalia, but not on Shabbos Shuvah. And then this Shabbos we should read what we call Shuvah, because it talks about rain. And since rain is the topic of Sukkot, B'chag Nidonim Alamayim, that's what we should read this Shabbos. And he says, this is Rabbeinu Sham Shita, it's based on the Psikta, and it's never going to change. Well, as funny as it sounds, it changed. It comes along the Shulchan Aruch, based on one opinion in the Mordechai, that says that since the Rambam says you always read Shuvah Yisrael, the Haftorah of Shuvah between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, we can read it the week after Sukkot, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch says, we don't paskin like this Tosfot in the name of the Rabbeinu Tam, even though he says this is the minhag that's never going to change. He says what we do is, we Shuvah in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and this Shabbos we're going to read a simple Haftorah by Yedaber David, namely, it talks about Haazinu, the Shirah of Haazinu. We're going to read about another Shirah, another song, and that is a Haftorah of talking about David singing a song before God. Well, as you can see, we changed the minhag. Literally, the Gemara said one thing, and even in the Gemara they said on Tisha B'Av, that's not what they did. The Tosfos says, this is what we should do, and this is the minhag that's never going to change. And even though the Shulchan Aruch does bring that opinion of Tosfot as Yesh Omrim, some say, his opinion, without the actual adjective of Yesh Omrim, is Shuvah in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and this Shabbos, we read a Haftorah that has nothing to do with the time of the year we're in. It just happens to be something that connects to Parshat Haazinu. And my question is, how did we get to this? How can it be we're violating what seems to be the regular way Jewish law works? We listen to the Gemara, but in the Gemara itself they said, Tisha B'Av we do something else. We have a different minhag. Tosfos says this is what we do. We usually paskin like the Tosfos, at least in Ashkenazi communities. And the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah come along and say, no, that's not what we do. Well, I'd like to suggest that this is a very good example of something that I think is cardinal to Jewish law and Jewish lore. And allow me to share a story from the Igrot Moshe from Moshe Feinstein. Someone sent him a pamphlet that says that when they start saying V'tein Talum Matar in Chutz La'aretz, it's absolute bogus. They start saying V'tein Talum Matar based on when they need rain in Babylonia. We're not living in Babylonia, we're living in America or Australia or England, and therefore everyone's wrong. Comes along Rav Moshe Feinstein, and in very harsh terms, Rav Moshe Feinstein, the posek, the innovator of Jewish law, the man that allowed us to eat Hershey's chocolate, the man that allowed us to drink regular milk that's not Chalav Yisrael, comes along and says the following words. I want to tell you a big rule. You think that what every single Jew does outside of Israel is wrong. And therefore it seems that you think with your wonderful mind that you're bigger than all the great rabbis that came before you, that everyone made a mistake and you found the mistake. With due respect, allow me, please forgive me, this is the height of haughtiness. This is being full of yourself. To think this way. And all the more so to write it and to actually say it. And you should know. You should know that when many Jewish people do it, it is probably correct. Because many Jewish people do it. And it's your job to actually go out and find a justification for it. And indeed, this is not the only time Rav Moshe Feinstein says this. He heard that in Yerushalayim they don't tear their shirt when they see the Har HaBayit without the Beis HaMikdash on Erev Shabbos after Chatzot. And even though Erev Shabbos after Chatzot doesn't have any status, the only time after Chatzot on an Erev something has a status, it's Erev Pesach, because that's when we brought the Korban Pesach. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, I find no justification for it. However, Mikol Makom, Im Itchilu Linhokin Barsot HaShanim, that's what they do in Yerushalayim. Even though there isn't a gadol that came out and said, I have a reason for it. But that's what the people do. It's still considered a custom. Ultimately, Rav Moshe Feinstein is not alone. Comes along the Shmirat Shabbos Kehilchasa, when he wrote that book, and Rav Yoshua Neuber said that his Rebbe told him, do not speak against Jews that make egg salad on Shabbos. Even though it looks like the malacha of lush, taking two particles and making them into one, like flour and water. Here it's mayonnaise and eggs. Don't talk against it. In a book, Va'aleu Lo Yibo, which talks about everything Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach ever did, he comes and says the following strong words about egg salad on Shabbos. You know why it's okay? Because that's what my mother did, and that's what my grandmother did. And therefore it's okay. You want me to explain the halachic logic? Even if my explanation doesn't sound good, it won't change the halacha. I believe that the is. Don't come out and say, if the books say otherwise, change the minhag. But rather, the minhag must be correct. There must be a reason for it. And even though with your Brooklyn accent and your mind you didn't yet find a reason, it doesn't mean it's not justified. The Maharam Padawa was told that in a certain community, they read Maftir Yonah on Yom Kippur like this. The first 3 psukim in Hebrew and the rest in the vernacular. And the rabbi wanted to change it. And in very strong words, he said, don't change it. You know why? I quote, Lozo haderech lehisha'ena binatenu levatel min hakadum. You don't go ahead and totally rely on your own mind to change an ancient custom. So this Shabbos, we're going to keep the custom in the Shulchan Aruch. Yes, it's written in the Shulchan Aruch, but no, it's not based on the classical books. The classical books and the classical poskim say otherwise. But we are going to bow to the minhag because it's probably correct.
Hashem,